What if I told you that America's first financial crisis had nothing to do with Wall Street, banks, or stock markets, because none of them really existed yet? What if the first panic that nearly broke the United States wasn't caused by debt, war, or foreign invasion, but by small copper coins, the kind most people barely notice today? In 1789, the United States was barely alive. The Constitution was new. The government was fragile. Trust in the idea of America itself was untested. And yet, this brand new nation almost collapsed not from armies or revolutions, but from a silent breakdown of money itself. No dramatic crash headlines, no stock tickers falling, no Wall Street traders panicking. Instead, there was a shortage of coins, collapsing trade, rising anger, and a dangerous realization spreading through towns and cities. If money doesn't work, nothing works. This is the story of the copper panic of 1789 America as forgotten first financial crisis and why its lessons still haunt the modern world. To understand the copper panic, we need to understand a shocking fact. The United States was born without a real currency. After the Revolutionary War, America was free but bankrupt. The Continental Congress had printed massive amounts of paper money to fund the war. Those bills, known as Continentals, became so worthless that people joked they weren't worth a Continental. By the late 1780s, there was no national bank, no standardized currency, no federal mint, no reliable supply of coins. Instead, Americans used whatever money they could find: British copper pennies, Spanish silver dollars, Dutch coins, French livres, private tokens, IOUs. Barter money wasn't a system, it was a patchwork of survival. And here's the critical detail: most history books skip daily life depended on small copper coins. Bread, beer, candles, wages, ferry rides, market food. Without small change, commerce froze. Gold and silver get the glory in history, but in 1789, copper was king. Why? Because copper coins handled everyday purchases, workers' wages, retail trade, urban markets. If silver disappeared, the rich suffered. If copper disappeared, everyone suffered. And copper coins had a unique problem: they weren't being made in America. There was no US mint until 1792. So where did copper coins come from? Mostly British halfpennies, Irish tokens, private mint coins, counterfeits, and that last word, counterfeits, is where the trouble begins. By the late 1780s, something dangerous was happening. Britain quietly and strategically allowed mass production of cheap copper coins. These coins flooded into America. Many were underweight. Many were fake. Many were fake. Many were nearly worthless. Why would Britain do this? Because weak money creates weak economies, and weak economies create weak states. The result was Gresham's law in action. Bad money drives out good money. Good copper coins disappeared into hordes. Bad copper coins dominated circulation. Merchants stopped trusting coins altogether. Prices rose, wages fell, trade slowed. People didn't call it inflation yet, but they felt it. By 1789, the crisis spread quietly but relentlessly. Shopkeepers began refusing copper coins. Workers demanded payment in silver or not at all. Markets stalled. Debts went unpaid. This wasn't panic in the modern sense, it was worse. It was a slow realization that money no longer worked. Imagine walking into a store and being told, your money isn't money anymore. That's what Americans experienced. And the timing couldn't have been worse. 1789 was the year. George Washington became president. The federal government officially began. The nation tried to prove it could function instead. The economy was choking at the ground level. As copper coins lost acceptance, social tension exploded. Urban workers were hit hardest. Small traders collapsed. Debtors were crushed. Sound familiar? Crowds blamed. Merchant speculators, elites, foreign powers, the government itself. There were protests. There were local refusals of currency. There were calls for drastic action. And behind it all was a terrifying question: if the government can't even provide money, why trust it at all? This was only a few years after Shays' Rebellion, where angry farmers took up arms over debt and taxes. The young republic was one shock away from fragmentation. In the absence of federal action, private solutions rushed in. Entrepreneurs began minting their own copper tokens. States tolerated unofficial coinage. Local authorities turned a blind eye. The result: more chaos, more counterfeits, more distrust, more fragmentation. Each solution fixed one problem and created three more. America wasn't just lacking money, it was lacking monetary authority. This is where Alexander Hamilton enters, not as a legend, but as a realist. Hamilton understood something critical. A nation without control over money is not sovereign. As Treasury Secretary, he pushed for a national mint, standardized coinage, federal control over money, a national financial system. His opponents feared tyranny, but Hamilton feared collapse, and history proved him right. The copper panic didn't end overnight, but it forced action. In 1792, Congress passed the Coinage Act. The U.S. Mint was established. Official copper cents were introduced slowly. Trust returned. Trade stabilized. Counterfeits declined. The crisis faded not because markets fixed themselves, but because the state finally took responsibility for money. Now here's the uncomfortable part. Everything you just heard has happened again many times. The Great Depression began with banking distrust. 2008 began with financial instruments people no longer trusted. Inflation crises begin when money loses credibility. Digital currencies rise when people doubt the system. Even today, cash usage is declining. Trust in institutions is falling. Private money systems are re-emerging. Monetary fragmentation is returning. The pattern is always the same. 1. Trust weakens. 2. Money breaks. 3. Society follows. Takeaway number 1. Money is trust, not metal. Copper didn't fail because it was copper. It failed because people stopped believing in it. Takeaway number 2. Small crises break nations faster than big ones. The copper panic didn't look dramatic, but it attacked daily life. Takeaway number 3. Monetary chaos always precedes political chaos. You can't build democracy on broken money. The copper panic of 1789 is forgotten not because it was small, but because it's uncomfortable. It reminds us that nations don't collapse suddenly, they erode quietly. And money is often the first crack. America survived its first financial crisis. But the question remains, would we recognize the next one in time? If this story changed how you see money, history, or power, like the video, it helps more than you think. Subscribe for deep dives into forgotten financial crises and hidden economic history. And comment below. Do you think modern money is stronger or just more complex? Because sometimes, the smallest coins tell the biggest stories.